Welcome back to It's Only Money with financial advisors Scott Brown and Tammy with Edgewater Family Wealth. Again, edgewaterfamilywealth.com is the website to get a hold of them, to work with them, and the number 407-648-1881. And before we left off, I gave you the email, which is edgewaterfamilywealth@raymondjames.com. And we do have emails from various listeners here to the show. Scott?
Do you have an email song?
I don't have an email song. And a lot of our emails, weirdly, are from an AOL email address. So
that says something.
I feel like
sure what.
some of y'all need to upgrade a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Get Gmail, at least. But I don't want to judge people on that because they do have serious questions. And the first question comes from Steven, not Steve. Steven.
With a P or a V?
With a P.
Oh, that's the fancy kind.
That's the fancy Steven, yeah. Like I can tell when they say their names.
Does his last name end with something the third?
It does not.
Okay.
But Steven is out of Ocoee, and he said, I'm a small business owner, and I've been thinking about working with a financial advisor. What is that experience entail?
Well, it entails a lot of things. That's got a lot of tentacles. So, and it's actually my favorite kind of client. Entrepreneurs are absolutely my favorite people to work with because it's not one dimensional. You know, the money part and the planning part is kind of one dimension, but for them, there's a lot of dimensions. There's tax deductibility. If I put $1 somewhere, where's the best tax benefit? And that's true of most people, but especially true of entrepreneurs. There's cash flow planning. You know, I have an entrepreneur, literally, I think Monday I'm going to meet with, and our whole goal of that conversation is how do we cash flow the next funding of his investment part of his business. He needs to fund some research. He needs to fund some sales. You know, it's a new company, so looking at his portfolio of stocks and bonds, looking at his equity in his house, looking at a variety of things. All right, where is the best place for us to get money from to fund this endeavor? How much money do we take out? What's a responsible amount? We don't want to get too far out over our skis with debt. So how do I borrow money or use my securities as leverage? How use my house as leverage? What are the most responsible ways to do this without getting myself in trouble, which also makes the most tax sense? So there's all kinds of issues from staffing to payroll to how many people do you hire? Where do you cut that off? Do I go over 50 people because that brings health insurance issues into the equation? Do I want to do health insurance anyway? If so, what's the deductibility of that? If I'm going to do a retirement plan, is it a 401k? Is it a SEP? Is it a simple? Do I add the Roth for people? I mean, the list is endless. But to me, it's a giant canvas to paint on. To me, that's the most fun, is sitting for an hour or two with an entrepreneur and trying to decide where are my best decisions, because you know, a really good financial advisor is really not totally caught up, or at least not 100% caught up in the stocks and bonds. To me, to some degree, that's a commodity, that portion of it. The conversation's where the gold is. And if you have the right financial advisor you can bounce ideas off of, that can be worth, in any given year, twice the fee or 3 times the amount of the fee. Oftentimes, we find with tax implications, we can save the client 2, 3 times whatever they're paying us. Not always, but quite frequently, just to have a conversation. So what you should expect from your financial advisor is whatever you need. They should be willing and be able, and here's the critical part, and I said this in my book, and it's somewhat critical of my industry. So there are clearly exceptions to what I'm about to say, but on average, people who call themselves financial advisors are not entrepreneurs. They are people who come to work at 9 and they do a little research, or they read the journal, they have their cup of coffee, they talk to a few clients, they go to lunch with their buddy, they come back, they answer a few more phone calls, and they go home. That's their business. And there's nothing wrong with that. Those people are useful and helpful in their own way quite frequently. But there's some financial advisors out there, and there are many in this town that I know, that are entrepreneurs themselves. So they're able to have that conversation with another entrepreneur. They have staff. They have marketing people. They have research people. They have people they pay. They're responsible for their well-being. They're responsible for their health care. They're responsible for their family's well-being. They understand what it's like to have to borrow money out of your 401k to keep people going and alive and eating while you get through a tough period of time. They understand that there was a period of time when they were younger, they were building their business, and they weren't sure how they were going to pay the electric bill. They get that. Most advisors are not like that, but there are certainly plenty that are, and if I were an entrepreneur or a small business person, I would work really hard to find those people.
That was one of the more interesting things I found meeting you and talking to you before we started doing the show. which was that like when it was pitched to me originally, before meeting you, I was like, okay, I feel like I know what this guy's gonna be. He's gonna come in with his slick suit, fast talking. He's gonna give all kinds of hot stock tips because he's probably getting some kind of kickback somewhere. Who knows? Yeah. And when we talked, I was like, oh, you're like a genuine person who seems to be very smart and also actually care not only about people, but like for some reason, you're a big nerd and super interested in all this stuff as well. And that comes off when I talk to you.
Yeah.
And I have like bros that I went to college with who've gone into the financial world, and that is not them.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, and again, I'm not painting everybody with the same brush. I'm going to have friends call me and yell at me. But the reality is that most advisors are good people. They're not nefarious people. They're just limited in their experiences because they chose to do the job, right? They took a job to be a financial advisor. And in that job, they show up and, yeah, they're trying to do good by the client. I don't think anybody's trying to do anything wrong. But they want to get compensated. They want to sell, right? And then they want to go home. And that's okay because that's a lot of people are content to do that. That's not wrong. But if I'm a young business person or even an older business person who's growing a business and maybe I'm going to go from 2 million to 8 million or to 20 million or 40 million in sales, I want my financial advisor to be able to have that conversation with me in advance. This person I gave you as an example is a friend of mine, and he's a relatively young guy. He's not even 40. And he and I meet maybe 2 or 3 times a year to discuss his business. We don't even talk about – I have to remind him to talk about stocks and bonds. His idea for a conversation is, hey, these are the initiatives I'm working on. If you're building a plumbing company and you have to make a hire, well, what's the best way to do that? Should I use some kind of headhunting company? Should I just hire an intern and build them myself? What would that cost? What are the tax implications? What are the cost of the benefits, right? Because if you hire an employee, for example, you say, well, I'm going to pay that employee $40,000 a year. Well, that's true, but that employee is going to cost you $50,000 a year, $55,000 a year, because they have health insurance, they have all the taxes that go for the employer, 401k, all that stuff. People think, well, I make $40,000 a year, you could that's a big deal. Well, it's not. It is a big deal because it's typically there's 20 to 30% more cost in an employee than they get in their pocket. Right? So, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. I'm not saying people shouldn't be paid what they're worth. They absolutely should. I believe that's the number one thing you have to invest in is people. And if you underpay people, guess what you're going to get? Underperformance, right? So I'm more the pay them up front and see what happens kind of guy. That doesn't always work. But as entrepreneurs, the point being is if I'm having a conversation, especially with a young entrepreneur, that's exciting to me because I've done a lot of dumb stuff as an entrepreneur. I've tried and experimented with things that didn't work. They were colossal failures, right? And that's how I grew. I said, okay, we're not doing that again, right? We're going to go a different path. So to me, the beauty of the relationship with a financial advisor, at least from my standpoint as the financial advisor, stocks and bonds are cool, and I can talk about them all day long. But what's really cool is watching an entrepreneur grow their business or a young family build their wealth.
That was a really good answer.
You're welcome.
like I was like, I had to stop for a second because I was like, oh yeah, I'm on the show and hosting this thing, and I was like, I just went like, yeah, great answer, Scott. So I just felt good about that. Second email I got is from a lady named Kayla out of the APK Apopka,
mm-hmm.
and she says this. She says, our house just got a bunch more money to it, which I'm assuming she means her house is worth more now.
Yeah.
And my husband is saying that we need to take that money and reinvest now because if your money isn't constantly moving, then you're losing money. Is this true?
This is what's her name?
Kayla.
If your money isn't constantly moving, what was this? Then you're losing money.
Yes.
Interesting statement. So when he says take money, I'm assuming maybe he wants to borrow against the equity in their house
and reinvest in either probably another home or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't hate that, but I don't love it either. So what I would say is you're overthinking it. Sometimes you win by not losing, right? So we've gone through this big period where your house is worth, you bought a $250,000 house, now it's worth $350,000. At least that's what you've been told, which that's also another interesting conversation with people. They'll say, my house is worth, I paid $400,000, it's worth $800,000. Well, what do you mean? Well, I ran the numbers and this, that, and the other, and my cousin and my uncle talked about it, and I heard then, and then got back to me, my house worth $8. That's it. Well, your house is worth what somebody will write you a check for. So the reality is you don't want to get over your skis. You don't want to assume this bull market's going to go on forever in housing. I'm not saying it's going to end anytime soon, but I think having that money in the bank, so to speak, and equity in your home is never a bad thing.
All right. Well, if you want more good advice, and if you're a small business person, you're going to want to work with Edgewater Family Wealth and get a hold of them you can email them like the other people have by going to edgewaterfamilywealth@raymondjames.com. The number 407-648-1881, and the website, of course, edgewaterfamilywealth.com. Check out the contact library and all the info's there as well. Scott, Tammy, great show. Good to see you again, and we'll see you next week.
Likewise. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
This has been It's Only Money on Real Radio 104.1.
Yeah, and clearly people are rich, right? Or wealthy. You don't have to be rich. I like the term wealthy better. I mean, to rich reminds me of like the Monopoly guy or something. But, they're people, they're regular people.
Now that guy I trust. You
Yeah,
see, the problem, Scott, you don't have a monocle.
Monocle is, now, if you can meet a guy with a monocle, I mean, like, I'm all in.
What was his financial advice? He said buy Park Place?
Where is that?
Where is that? I can't find it.
Tune in to It's Only Money with Scott Brown from Edgewater Family Wealth, Sunday mornings at 7 on Real Radio 104.1. Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Edgewater Family Wealth is not a broker-dealer, is independent of RJFS.